Hello, Out Entrepreneurs. Rhodes Perry here, and welcome to episode number 46 of The Out Entrepreneur, a weekly podcast where I get to interview today's most inspiring LGBTQ bosses crushing it in business. So on today's show, I am super excited to be interviewing the one and only Robyn Streisand, who is joining us all the way from the Big Apple. So Robyn, are you ready to inspire fellow out bosses?
I am ready. Let's do it.
I love it. Thank you again for being on the show. So a little bit about Robyn. She is a 30-year veteran in the world of marketing. She owns and operates a full-service agency known as the Mixx, which just celebrated its 20th anniversary. So congratulations. That's huge. And how effective is Robyn? Well, her clients have her on speed dial and appreciate that they can always count on her for ideation sessions. And among her clients are Mercedes-Benz, Disney, and Deloitte. So really high caliber clients right there. And away from working on her business, Robyn and her partner, Linda, have raised two beautiful girls, and they reside in New York. Robyn, to kick off the interview, tell us just a little bit more about your business and what makes it unique.
So two things. One is actually the Mixx in March turned 21,
Whoa,
so
cool.
not 20. And so we are of the official drinking age, so yay for us. That was a huge benchmark. I don't think that anybody ever thinks that their business is going to be 21 years old. I think like we think about 3-year or 5-year or 10-year max. And oh my God, it's been an amazing journey. The other thing that's unique about the Mixx is actually a founding member of a large-scale enterprise-wide agency called Titanium Worldwide. I am also the CEO and founder of that. That launched 3 years ago in June. So it's kind of really cool as an entrepreneur to have one very mature, successful company on its way to college, and yet to have a 3-year-old that's really still trying to figure out how to get up and walk, let alone sprint and run. So there's a lot of very interesting things happening at the Mixx as a result of being a founding member of Titanium Worldwide.
Wow. So congratulations on the Mixx being 21. That's huge. And also raising a new baby, so to say, with Titanium Worldwide. You know, You obviously have a lot on your plate, running both of those business enterprises. Right now, what has you most inspired in your business today?
I would say I've always been that girl that was really what I would call early to market. I'm a visionary. I'm ahead of the curve. I'm a total risk taker. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But the power of being early to market is that when everybody catches up, you kind of have your footing. And so what I see happening now with the conversation around diversity and inclusion being at the forefront of every C-suite executive, CEO, CMO, CTO, CIO, that I'm a solution that really resonates with what they're looking for, and the whole idea of maintaining our boutique structure, right? Because in my world, people think about agencies and they think about brands they know, like Ogilvy or Saatchi or DDB or Anomaly or Mother, etc. And, all those agencies are large scale, extremely successful, amazing agencies. The Mixx is a boutique, and it's been a strategy of mine all through our journey. But this idea of really providing very intimate one-on-one conversations with our clients, really kind of getting in the hearts and minds of what makes people tick, and really going above and beyond from a customer service perspective. So while now all companies are looking and talking and thinking about what is diversity and inclusion inside of their business, both inside and out, the Mixx is really showing up like a turnkey solution for all the things that are keeping C-suite executives up at night.
Yeah, I mean, you've said so many amazing things just in that response. And I think a couple of things that I just want to highlight again for our listeners is, you were talking about going early to market. So you really establish a foothold in the work that you're doing around marketing and diversity and inclusion, and you're known. So starting out in that field when the Mixx got started 21 years ago, very different time than where we are today. And because you were there in that space early on, you're a go-to, right? And I think that's really, really important for a lot of people who have that kind of business idea. They're just getting started and maybe not so certain because maybe the market isn't quite ready for the products that they have, but kind of finding those clients that really resonate with what you're doing and establishing yourself is so important. And I think you're a great example for that, especially with the Mixx. So I really appreciate you sharing that. So for many entrepreneurs, we tend to get started for one of two reasons, or at least the folks that I interview on this show. And the first is that people felt a calling. There was a purpose-driven idea and they wanted to pursue that. And the second of why getting started in their own businesses was that they felt they were working for someone else, they were working on someone else's dreams, and they didn't quite fit into the culture of that business or organization. And so they wanted to leave and create something that was more in line with who they are. And Robyn, I'm curious kind of which side of the coin did you land on primarily when you got started with the Mixx 21 years ago?
It's a good question. Well, let me say that I was always one of those people that saw the opening, right? It wasn't like I ever had a plan. I wasn't, as I was growing up, saying, oh, I'm going to be a marketer and I'm going to work for P&G or I'm going to work for this company. It was never obvious to me, but I always knew the right place at the right time. And whether it was something I wanted, I was interested or curious about, I would always just take a look. And it's been kind of like the central theme for everything that I do at work, at life, at home, with family is, sometimes you just don't know. And the ability to be able to step into whatever it is and kind of be open-minded around that path is something that I've just always, it's been like kind of like my DNA. And so I didn't know that this is what I wanted, right? I know that I started at Citibank, so I was a client, and I know that I was responsible for many years of hiring agencies, and I had a certain experience of what that was. And whether it worked or it didn't, it was how corporate America operated. And what I saw and what I wanted as a client was somebody to care about me and not be so consumed with themselves, but to be a collaborative partner. And it felt like that it really didn't exist. And I would work with a multitude of different kinds of agencies, and there was always some kind of missing. And so when Citibank wound up moving out of Manhattan and into Long Island City, it was time for me to make a move. And I wound up leaving. And I don't know, you could call it timing. I just thought that, there was an opportunity to start my own business and do my own thing. And I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know whether to be a subchapter S, a C Corp, an LLC. But it is the power of having connections and not being afraid to not know and asking for help. And so, again, being that kind of inquisitive person, before you know it, I'm meeting somebody that was, going to incorporate the company, file all the paperwork. I met a lawyer that was going to help draft the operating agreement and get me all registered with the appropriate people and places and parts. And then I wind up realizing that because I was at Citi for so long, that I had a built-in network of all those people that came and went over the time that I was working there as a full-time employee. And then when I went out on my own, it's not like I had a sales strategy or I even knew how I was going to get business, but it was just more about connecting with people that I already knew and just letting them know what I was doing. And before you know it, these people were actually becoming my new clients. And even so much so that I wound up leaving Citi on such a on great terms that they wound up coming to me because I had the industry knowledge, I had the internal, like I knew how to navigate inside the company, I understood budgeting, I knew how to work with procurement. And so from the other side, I was able to bring my knowledge from a completely different perspective, which actually gave me like a real true 360 look of how to work with somebody that I've already been working as the client, but as the agency partner. And they were like the real true litmus test for what it's like to build a relationship. And I have to say, I never look back after that. You know, it's like once you keep overcoming those hurdles, and trust me, it's like playing any kind of video game. You never know when that wall or that ball or that truck or that object's going to come at you. I mean, that's what it's like running a business. And so it's been an entire journey just like that.
Yeah, I love the video game analogy. And 3 things I was able to pull out of what you said that I think is so important to underscore for listeners is that, you know, the first piece, you know, you're talking about working at Citibank, gaining all these skills, this kind of insider knowledge, and then seeing an opportunity of saying, hey, I hire these other marketers, you know, all the time. And me as a client, I'm not getting what I need. I know that I could start this business and provide a higher level of customer service. And you saw that opportunity. And when Citibank made the move, you found the right timing, right? And I think the other 2 things that I think is really important is that when you saw that opportunity, you were willing to take the risk. And you had said earlier in this interview, you're a huge risk taker, right? You weren't certain what was on the other end, and yet you were willing to make that jump because you had a pretty rich network of people already. You've established these relationships. And then the third thing is that you basically reintroduced yourself to folks that you worked with at Citibank and I'm sure other corporations of like, hey, I'm out here now, I'm doing this new thing, and here's what I can provide for you. And I just think that that's so right on. And I think it's just great advice for those folks just thinking about getting started and where they see those opportunities. And just, it's a lot of mindset, just kind of working around not knowing, you know, and being okay with that, but knowing that there's tons of people out there ready, willing, and able to support you. So, Robyn, I'd like to shift a little bit and talk a little bit more about your LGBT identity and how that shows up in your business. And where I want to start first is to take us back to a time in the course of the Mixx being 21 years old now. And maybe this was early on. When you were just getting started, you may have been thinking about how out you want to be in your business, or you're going to be 100% out. Regardless of where you kind of landed on that, can you think of a time where you were a little uncertain about how out and how open you want to be about who you are in the world, who your family is, because you were afraid of possibly losing a client, or even you may have felt unsafe? And the reason why I want to ask this question is because a lot of people who are just at that place where they are taking advantage of that opportunity and getting started, for many LGBT folks, it's just kind of thinking about where they live in this country or in the world and how that can actually help or hurt their business. And so just wanted to hear your perspective of how you worked around a challenge, and then maybe provide a little bit of advice for other people who might be experiencing similar challenges.
So I don't know that I'm going to be like the best person for this, because it's going to sound a little bit like, I think, utopia. I would say one of my, I want to call it a gift, but one of my gifts is the freedom to be who I am, and around my self-expression, around my identity, around being just very open and public facing. Ever since I could remember, you know, when I was in 5th grade, when I was in 7th and 8th grade, like having my first inklings and realizations about my affinity for all people, right? Girls and boys. And for me, I was one of those people that it was a choice for me. And whether it was who I am is possible, I guess. But I just saw that path was something that I wanted to pursue. And I think what happened, the difference between me and somebody that's of a different ethnicity is when I show up in a room, people don't judge me by I'm gay, right? It's not like I'm African American and I walk in and people say, oh, there's a subconscious bias from the onset. And I think what I've done inside of my purpose is because I guess it wasn't obvious to people that they were always surprised, but then they saw another side of safety and okayness around being around gay people because I was just like everybody else and I happened to be gay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't overt or it wasn't offensive. And I wear my wedding rings on my finger. And even to this day, you know, sometimes people go for my left hand and they might say, oh, so what does your husband do? And then I say, well, my wife, what she does is she's also an entrepreneur and a CEO and a certified business, and she does X, Y, and Z. And so people are always like, well, all right then, you know, so it's more of that. It's been a surprise for a lot of people. And as a result of that, I think it's been really a healthy way for people to kind of realize things aren't always their stigma or their perception of what they look like. And it's giving people an opportunity to look at it from another place.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. And just kind of the subtle corrections when people assume that you are straight or that you're married to a man, and you just kind of gently kind of redirect. And it's that through that normalization that I think shows that you're really comfortable in your own skin, and that, you know, for people that, you know, they may want to learn more about LGBT communities, they may see you as a person who is safe. You know, you're talking about safety to be more comfortable and working with folks in the rainbow family. So, and I think that that's just a great model for people if they do feel safe themselves, just to try it out. You know, if you're married to someone of the same sex and someone's wrongly assuming who your partner is, you know, try that kind of gentle redirection and see how it goes. And you know, there's been a number of other people on the show that have shared something similar. And, you know, it was scary the first time they did it. And then they just found that kind of the more that they were open with themselves, that really created better rapport, trust with their clients. So one thing about the show is that, you know, it's all about empowerment. And I'm really focused on amplifying some of the benefits of being an outboss. And so I'd like for you to reflect on why being an outboss from your perspective is an asset to the work that you do. So for example, you know, what are some of the immediate strengths that might come to mind when you think of the power of being an outboss?
So I think so much has changed with technology, right? Because I think, and because I've been on my own for so long, I would say it's only become more relevant and more heightened as far as, and even more exaggerated with this millennial community coming to the forefront, like with such rigor and passion and energy. But people want to work for people who believe in what they believe in. And, you know, you could see what's happening out there in the current landscape around the political conversation, around people stepping down or people opting out or people opting in, because everybody's voice matters. And so for me at work, I employ people. I'm very clear and open about who I am. And I think people come to me to work for me because of it. And people come to work at the Mixx to realize their potential of who they are, not so much because we're an integrated agency that does really great work for cool brands. I think it's way deeper than that. Foundationally, it's really about being themselves and having that kind of freedom to develop and grow and become themselves while they're at work. And God only knows, we spend the majority of our time and life at work. Mm-hmm. And so to have that place where you could go to, it's almost like, well, of course, there's pressures and deadlines and all the nuances that go along with it. But to be in an environment where you could be you and that I could provide that to my employees, is like a win-win-win for everybody. And, the truth is from as it expands into like furthering my own personal career path, I've always been a volunteer in the community. I always show up at the event. So it's not just lipstick on the pig for me that I'm, an NGL, CC, and WeBank certified business. I also write checks and I also show up, and I wouldn't say I'm an activist. I would say I'm an extremely passionate advocate. And, what you see is what you get. And so this whole world was primed for my path, and I didn't know it back then that I was going to be exactly in the right place at the right time.
Yeah. I think just kind of hitting on the head again, what you were saying about at the Mixx, you're providing the space where your staff can be themselves. And through doing that, you're seeing them kind of thrive and blossom, and grow, right? And just kind of grow into their profession. And I just think, that you're in the field of doing D&I work, in a marketing space. What better example to create a business to say, hey, here's how we do it. Here's some guidance that you may want to consider, for some of the bigger clients that you're working with. So, your actions are clear, and that you're kind of walking the talk. So one more question before we go to a sponsorship break. And that question is just kind of considering all of the challenges and all of the blessings of being a part of the Rainbow family, being an outboss. What do you want our listeners to really focus in on and make sure that they take away to inspire them to be just authentic at work? Whether they're, they've started their businesses or they're thinking about starting their business, how can they be more authentic on the job?
I have like several suggestions. One is you got to surround yourself with mentors and guides to keep you true north. It's easy to default back to your fear and what you know. And those two things lots of times get intertwined. And as a result of that, you don't realize your full potential. So that's one thing. Number two is, you have to have trust in yourself, and that you're perfectly fine how you are, and it doesn't really matter. And if you make it matter, it will matter. Mm-hmm. And if you just be true you, it won't matter. It makes it better for everybody, not necessarily calling it out. For example, if you go to any of these recruiting events or conferences and you talk about what it means to be an LGBT certified business, if you're in those forums where thousands of people are there because they're certified and they want to connect and they want to work with people that are of like mind, the conversation is you have such freedom of expression and dialogue that, people have a tendency to only stay within those confines. But what I find is the contribution that I make outside of those conferences and safe places, although it's not necessarily safe to me, but it's where I grew up, let's say. But, now I go to, the ANA conferences, and I go to, the Con and the Ad Age and all these other places where thought leadership is what they're looking for in the marketing space. And then I bring a whole other foundational layer around what it means to be a certified business. And so I would say that I really impacted the education and awareness of this, because most of the people that I talk to and work with don't know the first thing about it. And you would think in this day and age, while it's the only thing good about the capital T, is that if there's a heightened level of awareness and education around what does diversity inclusion mean. Mm-hmm. But let me be clear, previous to that, most people didn't know, didn't care, and weren't interested.
Yeah.
So it's all good. And it's just about, finding your path and staying your course. And, if anybody needs help, they can call me because I will totally push you over the edge.
I love it. I love it. So mentorship, trust yourself. And one other thing that you said is just go into spaces that need you, not the obvious spaces. Go to the spaces, like you said, where there is thought leadership in general in your field, and add that dimension about your own lived experiences. So whether it's being LGBT, you're talking about being a woman certified business, add that layer, and make sure that people are talking about that. Because like you said, in this current political and cultural time, people are craving conversations around diversity and inclusion. And what better time, especially, if that's the work that you're doing. So what we're going to do right now is we are going to take a very quick sponsorship break. And for our listeners, please don't go anywhere, because when we return, we're going to get to learn more about Robyn and her business.
HR and diversity professionals. Are you struggling with engaging LGBTQ talent? Do you stay awake at night worrying about limiting litigation risks? Have you considered seeking support around these concerns, but just aren't sure where to turn? Look no further. Rhodes Perry Consulting offers you solutions with the Engaging LGBTQ Talent A to Z certification. This proven 4-week mentorship program delivers skills, offers support, and connects you with other professionals committed to transforming themselves and their workplaces. Learn more about this cutting-edge program by visiting rhodesperry.com and use the promo code RPC for a 10% discount. Take action and visit rhodesperry.com.
Welcome back, Outbosses. We are now going into our bonus round, where we'll have the chance to get to know Robyn a little better, gain some insights on how we can bring our whole selves to work, and then learn how to stay in touch with Robyn after today's conversation. So Robyn, are you ready for some quick fire questions?
Let's do it.
Yes. Awesome.
Yes.
In one sentence, what does it mean to bring your whole self to work?
Showing up every day with a smile, being who you are, and not letting any of the politics, the attitude, or ego get in the way.
I love it. I love the positive attitude and the smile. I think smiling really helps. What's one personal habit that helps you master yourself and your business?
My OCD.
Yes. Are you a Virgo? I'm a Virgo. So
wait a minute. I am 100% Sagittarius, but my best partners are Virgos.
Yes. All right. Yay, Virgo pride. Yeah, I get that. I get the OCD piece. And so name one thing that you readily delegate in your business to stay focused on what you're good at.
The operations, the process, right? Because I'm somebody that has really good intentions about things, and I'll say, oh, by the end of the day, I'll get you this, or yeah, we'll definitely be able to frame that out and get it done, like no problem. And then before you know it, not only A, did I forget about that, but B, I operate from a place of accountability and like integrity around my word. And I have a really strong process around me so that I don't make these promises that I cannot deliver. And that to me is operations, operations, operations.
Yeah. So it makes sense you've got a lot of Virgos surrounding you. So like the technicians, you've got the vision, and you kind of know at least like the people that you can lean on to get some of the like nuanced stuff done. So very cool. Very cool.
Yes.
So can you share a book or a podcast that's contributed to your success as a boss?
I mean, I read everything. I would say Good to Great really inspired me. I would say The Tipping Point really inspired me, and I always refer back to it. And I would think Ad Age has been a part of my life since the beginning.
Awesome. So the last one was called Ad Age?
Yeah, Ad Age. Okay. Like Ad Age is like the go-to content publisher provider for everything in the marketing, media, and communication space. Like I read it every week. Oh, and I'd also say Fast Company is like my Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all of those are awesome resources, and I'll be sure to include those in the show notes for our listeners. All great suggestions. So 2 more questions for you, Robyn. Can you share one piece of advice to inspire the next generation of outbosses to take that first entrepreneurial leap?
Yes. Volunteer. Right. Volunteer, right? Because I think, people talk about getting involved and connecting, and a way to really understand what makes the community tick, what has you realize the power of the people around you and how people really want to contribute and give, is to get involved and, show up. Don't just write a check, but actually participate and be a part of it. And one of my biggest goals is to really bring the L and the G together and to really create more of a unified one voice. And although the women's movement right now is on fire, but I would like to see more unification around, the community around men and women.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the, just the general guidance around volunteering, especially for folks just wanting to get started on their own business. If there's skills that are missing or lacking, there's tons of ways to get involved, especially in LGBT communities, where you can brush up on your coding skills or whatever it is. And then you can take that with you as you build your own businesses. So really spot on advice there. And last question for you, Robyn. So please share just one way that we can stay in touch with you and learn more about your business after today's conversation.
Yes, you could feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, through email. I'm that girl. Like, I get back to everybody and anybody. Probably I get about 800 emails a day. And I touch people. Like, sometimes it's just a one sentence response saying, like, I'm jammed this week, call me next week, set it up with Renesa, who's my admin. But I just don't screen my calls or not get back to people because I'm me. I am just so not me. But anybody can reach out to me. It's Robyn with a Y at the Mixx with 2 X's, NYC.com.
Great. And we'll be sure to include that in the show notes as well. Super generous. So if folks, if you're listening to this, just Robyn is amazing, and I'm really, really generous just to share your email that way and for responding,
totally.
Personally, that's huge. 800 emails a day. Whew, okay. So on top of doing all of the amazing work that you do. So that's incredible. So Robyn, thanks again for being on the show. Outbosses, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. It is always my privilege to connect with you and so many inspiring outbosses like Robyn. So as a next step, please check out the show notes for highlights from today's conversation, subscribe to the podcast, and consider leaving a rating and review in iTunes. And for now, keep being your authentic selves 100% of the time.